Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers of Washington in its monthly author showcase. I am your host, Mark Miller. Today we have here sitting in the claw hot seat one Joanne Jaytanie, and hopefully I just didn't mutilate your last name.
Perfect.
A rather prolific and travel writer. She now resides in the Pacific Northwest with her husband and canine four-legged family members. I shared a table with her at the Bremerton Blackberry Festival on Labor Day weekend 2017, where we were successfully hawking our works. Joanne, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today, Mark.
Now we start with the standard question we ask just about everyone who visits us and puts up with our personal probing. How did you first catch the writing bug, or as some of us refer to this activity of putting ideas on paper and computer screens?
Well, I was thinking about that. It's kind of hard to say, but because as far as I can recall, I always did what we called back then writing in a diary, which we now call journaling. It sounds better, I guess. So for years I wrote in diaries, probably from the time I was 12. But about my freshman year, I had a creative writing class with an instructor that I just loved, and he had us do a project that I just hated, which was writing a poem. And I racked my brain. Poems, they're still not something I really enjoy. But I was laying in bed after hours and hours of not coming up with anything, and it started snowing that night. And the snow started falling, and I could hear it, you know, the storm getting louder and louder and louder, and the idea for a poem came to me of relating it to a train and walking in the snow. So that's kind of the point I think I really picked up on writing and wanting to be a writer.
I have to ask one real quick question. How many diaries do you think you actually wrote?
I don't know. I know when I moved from New York to Oklahoma, I had like 15 of them.
Oh,
and
okay.
When I was younger than that, I had them, but I started throwing them out because I didn't want people to see what I wrote. Like, I wish now that I didn't, but it's always like, okay, I wrote this down, and if such and such finds this book, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. So did your writings help to lead to your travels and moves across the United States, or did your travels and moves kind of affect and lead to your writing?
I traveled based on life circumstances. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. My dad lived there for 53 years. I was in my second year of college, and he decided to move out to be with his other side of the family in Oklahoma. So he begged and pleaded for me to finish college out there, which I did. And I just didn't take to the state the way he did. So after I finished college, I did 1 year of working in Oklahoma, and then I decided to move to be closer to my sister, which was in California, Northern California. My brother-in-law was in the Navy. And at that time, I actually picked up journaling again, and I did journaling then. So then I started incorporating things that I was seeing, places that I was going, and things like that. So I would say that I moved first, wrote second.
Have to be nosy. What university in Oklahoma?
I started in OU, Oklahoma University, but I came from private colleges where our classes were like, 10 to 12 people, and sitting in a classroom of 500 people was just overwhelming for me. So I did finish my degree at Central State in Edmonds.
What did you get your degree in?
Business and marketing, personnel.
And yet you're a writer.
And yet I'm a writer.
Which actually probably gives you a leg up on the rest of us, because we've been stumbling along trying to learn marketing and everything to do with getting our books out there and trying to get people to read them.
Well, I'm stumbling right along with you. It's a change. I think it changes daily.
Well, while we were at the Blackberry Festival, we had a conversation at our booth there of this blend of suspense, romance, and the paranormal that you have in some of your books. Can you kind of explain what that blend is, how you came to write it, and how you came to combining those elements?
Well, it's the series right here, my first 4 books. And it's romantic suspense with supernatural elements. And how I came about that was my women in the books each have their own special ability. One of them, out of these four, one of them can read auras, one of them magnifies others' abilities, and one of them grounds, as a grounder. So, and the supernatural really came in with the DNA manipulation. The men in the books also have special abilities stemming from wolf DNA. They don't shift, but they pick up things like being able to jump a house, being able to run faster than anybody else, but theirs are all done from human manipulation.
I noticed that in the young adult genre right now, there's a lot of that with the pack type, supernatural pack thing, when somebody's got, like you said, part of a wolf.
Right.
A lot of the young writers now, high school types, are trying to write in that genre. But you're aimed a little bit more to the adult, I would say.
Yeah, it is adult. It's and actually, it's sort of aimed towards not happening, although there's some things that do happen, and so I kind of relate it towards it's possible. It's a possibility.
Okay.
So I try not to go too far out there. I try to relate it to it could happen in the future. It could be happening now.
And once again, to be nosy, did something happen that got you really interested in the paranormal?
I have read paranormal forever, and that's where I wanted to start. And if it doesn't have suspense in it, I get bored. You know, by page 3, if they're not shooting, running, going.
But you didn't wake up with some guy in a sheet going by your room, or something like that.
No.
Okay.
Actually, the idea, my first book was, for the series, I had my whole idea of, I knew where I wanted to go, what I wanted to cover, but I couldn't come up with my female lead. And I was sitting on the floor one day with a girlfriend of mine who happened to also be a veterinarian, and she did chiropractic and acupuncture, and we had one of my dogs laying between us, snoring away, and started getting into those deep conversations about what people don't understand about dogs and being able to relate. And I always thought of her as someone very intuitive. She could read animals. She really understood them. And we're talking along, and then all of a sudden I jump up, and the dog jumps up, and I say, I've got it. And I basically started my victory based on my girlfriend and her attributes. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, so your character was a veterinarian also?
She is a veterinarian. She's not active.
Oh, okay.
She does some things, but she's in genetics.
Oh,
she's a genetics person.
Well, I perused your autobiography entry that you put on Amazon on the web. It talks about your desire to submerge yourself in the world of the characters and to live and breathe their lives and really get to know them. So, once again, some more interrogation. Who is your favorite female character in your world?
I love all my female characters. There's things I love about them, things I don't. I mean, like everybody always says, I write from what I know, so every character has something relatable to me or someone I know. But I would have to, if I have to make a decision, it would have to be Victory, because she was the beginning of my series, and she's the one. So I would say it would be Victory.
So in a way, she kind of set a little bit of a mold of the type of strong female characters you like to write
And she's
about.
Also, out of the triplets, she's also kind of the mama figure.
Oh.
Even though they're triplets, she's kind of the more grounded one.
Oh, cool.
So.
And of course, now I've got to ask you, do you have a favorite male character?
I guess the same would be said for that. I would have to pick Tristan. Tristan was the first hero.
Okay.
Although as I moved more through my series, I was liking his brother and Tristan's teammates. So
what made Tristan to be a hero?
He didn't think he was a hero.
You have that nice little character arc.
Yeah, he didn't think he was. He's sort of a little more self-centered in the beginning, and but he's very protective of people. So even though he didn't really take to Victory right away, he was very protective of what was happening to her. So
he was, in a way, forced into the hero mode.
Sort of was, yeah.
And then
he wanted to get out of being in the military because he liked what he did, but it was too structured.
Right.
So he's not a structured type person. But he did go into SOCOM, and he kind of had his brother a little more flexible.
So he rose to the occasion, which a lot of our characters do.
Right.
I asked another question of your friend and fellow author, D.V. Burkham. Do you think it's hard for a male author to create and write about realistic female characters? And I ask that because years ago in science fiction, a lot of female authors purposely took male-sounding names because they didn't. At that time, if you said you were a woman writing science fiction, like adventure science fiction, they'd go, what? So one of the famous ones was Andre Norton. Everybody thought for years that she was a he,
Right.
and then found out later she was married to another science fiction writer. So do you think it's more of a difficulty for a male to write for female roles, and do you think there's any problem then about women also writing in a way trying to put their self into a man's body, I guess, and try to write about how they would react and everything?
We know women know all about men.
Yeah.
We don't have any problem describing
Why, thank you.
I think it's really loosened up, although I do see in the suspense and the straight suspense and thriller, women, a lot of them are still using initials, so they're not doing that. I think it's opening up, like in the romance genre and different genres like that, to more men. In fact, my writers group in Seattle, Romance Writers of Seattle, we have 2 or 3 males that write romance, and I think it's opening up, and basically if you can do it well, you can do it. And my only thing would be, I've had a couple other guys ask me, and I would say get yourself a female editor. So somebody you can bounce things off of, or at the very least, maybe a group of female beta readers. But I think it can be done, and I think if it's done, the readers don't care if you're male or female.
Well, I had a discussion, like I said, with Daphne when we were there, and she told me that she actually had a little bit of a difficulty writing about some of the more touchy-feely stuff, because she's definitely is a type of person who, when she writes an action scene, it's an action scene, you know. I made mention that I got her beat then because I actually wrote one of my sci-fi novels. I have a big wedding scene. And she said, I've never considered writing a wedding scene. I said, well, one of these days I'll let you read my wedding scene in the previous build-up, and you can tell me if, you know, if you're going to sit there and go, what the heck are you doing? Women don't act that way, you know, type stuff. But it's fascinating then, like you said, about the changes, and then trying to write the characters. And it sounds like you base, of course, a lot of your characters on people you knew.
Right, I do, yeah. I do base, not the whole entire, I like to watch people too. I go to places where I can people watch and pick up, I can see habits and things, but probably my personnel background. I don't think there's one character that I can name that, maybe one of my small secondary characters, that doesn't have a couple aspects of somebody I know. And then maybe a group of different ones coming from different people. You can't say one person is such and such. I try to disguise it a little bit.
And of course, there's somebody that you really dislike that you make a villain.
Now that one you might know. You might know who they are. But I do think writing, same as writing action and writing, if you read the romance scenes, I can always tell when it's coming from the male writing the romance scene and the female writing the romance scene.
I got to delve into that. That's one of those questions that everybody's going to ask. How can you tell?
Emotion. There's much more emotion in a woman that writes a
I'm gonna
romance scene.
Interrogation time.
Oh gosh.
What do you really mean by emotion? I mean, how would you display it when you're writing?
Feelings and reactions and things that are said. I think men are not, I'm not saying men don't have emotions, but when you're dealing with a romance scene, it's faster moving when a man seems to be writing the scene.
Would you think some of that may have to do with the idea of trying to separate, well, there are actually kind of 3 categories: romance, eroticism, and sex.
Yeah, I'm not talking eroticism.
Yeah. So you've got those 3. So you're trying to do the romance, but sometimes if you get over more into the physical stuff, because just because sometimes it does fit into the plot or fits into the world you've created. You know, in other words, it's not just there for titillation.
Right.
Because of that, I guess it's kind of the blurring of the lines, trying to get that right feel.
Right. And mine does, and I have some friends that laugh at me because one of Joanne's books, she'll have 2 sex scenes in it. It's like, that's it! I don't need any more. And basically, it's because it's a relationship, and you're building the relationship. So depending on the book you're writing, which is mine is suspense, and it's
But then, of course, then you
pretty
get back
male-oriented,
to
and
the idea of when we're talking about
goes
characters.
through a whole length of time. You get to that place where then you have to make the decision: do you want to do a closed door? Do you want to do an open door?
Strong female characters versus strong male characters. How do you display them in a way that people are gonna believe?
Right.
You know, I've got strong female characters in some of my sci-fi stuff they're very strong, they're warrior types, but then you've got to try to give them that softer side to show that they're not just robots.
Right.
But the same thing with the men, because you have a tendency of writing with male characters, of course, you do everybody does a stereotype, they start doing the stereotype. So then you got to kind of look in there, the idea of, okay, can a strong male character cry? You know, if you're going to have that, I think that makes it a little bit more human.
I think it does too, and that's why sometimes I've been criticized about head hopping, which I do a little less.
What's that?
When you're going from changing point of views.
Oh.
But I feel, you know, because I had one editor ask me, well, do you write in first person? No, I don't write in first person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and it's true, I mean, the men still have the feelings, but they're more internal usually. So from the male point of view,
Yeah.
when you're in their head, you can relate that to the reader and the person, whereas when you're in the female point of view, it's usually more action-oriented. You know, not much stays just in the head.
So they're acting on their emotions.
Exactly.
Oh.
Not always, but a lot more
So
than the males do.
Okay. So for us male writers, that's kind of a hint for us to make sure making sure that the woman actually shows
Right.
the emotion rather than just internalize it.
Right.
Okay.
They do internalize. I mean, we internalize everything, but
you-
more tends to
yeah.
come out with them. Than,
Well, you've internalized it, but as you're internalizing it, you're also
right.
coming out.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, now that I've learned something, I can write better.
There you go. That's my point of view.
No, but see, that's the thing, is that as authors and writers, that we try to do, and you want to make realistic characters, you know,
you
so that
don't want them flat and
you don't want them flat, you don't want them too stereotyped.
Right, right.
Because let's face it, it's real easy to fall into that
Right.
stereotypical character.
and you can have a
but
man
simple.
that cries, and you can have a woman that never shows any emotion.
Circumstances, women were forced to be extremely hard.
Right.
And I've met some women like that in my life. That I have a grandmother who was that way, who grew up, you know, in rather austere conditions and also lived through the Depression.
Right.
Very caring woman, but she was also very hard and wouldn't take crap off anybody. So it's that trying to.
And did she display as many emotions? I mean, you can be caring and not display as many emotions.
That's just it. She didn't. Once in a while,
Right.
She'd break down. When she got angry, she could swear like a sailor at times, which was just hilarious sometimes for us kids growing up, you know. But you could tell she cared about everybody. She really
Right.
cared about people, even though she had that little bit of that exterior, hard exterior, because she had to be tough
Right.
when she was growing up and everything. And as she got older, she became extremely crippled up with rheumatoid arthritis, but she wouldn't let it get her down. She refused to be, you know, stationary like some people would. She got up and did what she had to do, you know. And so it was kind of, you know, like you said, the whole thing of trying to develop
She'd be a
characters.
good character.
Oh, I think part of my female characters are based on, well, also 30 years in law enforcement, you meet strong women characters too,
Right.
because they have to be, because we're in what was a traditional male world.
Right.
And so you have to kind of figure out, okay, what are you going to do to adapt? And same thing is, I guess one of these days I'll have to write something about a male having to be in a complete female world and try to see how they would adapt to that. That'd be kind of an interesting thing to try to figure
be.
out. So how do you publish your books? Do you have just one publisher, or do you
I am
use others?
currently an indie author, which means I do all my own work,
okay.
but I do have 3 editors. I have a book cover designer, and I have a person that helps me with the technical stuff. But right now I do all my own work, but not to say that I wouldn't be open to being hybrid, which would be a good thing.
Well,
to
this
be.
is something we always talk about too, as part of CLAW. You want to care to share any advice or any misadventures with publishing?
Adventures.
Yeah.
I think it's with publishing, just like everything else, it's a learning curve, and it's a really fast and real steep learning curve in the writing world. And things that you learn today, in 2 weeks from now, could be obsolete. So you really kind of have to stay on the pulse of it. You have to always see what's going on, make sure you network enough.
Yeah.
Know, like if you're working with Amazon, know what their rules are, and because it changes daily.
Did you ever try to deal with a mainstream large publishing company?
I have not yet, but I have a couple that I have pitched to that are both interested in my current work that I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But I probably will go ahead and send it just to see what they say.
Well, if they're halfway nice, I've got nice rejection letters, and I've got rejection letters of, oh, why'd you waste my time? So that's
or the form letter.
Yeah,
Thank you very
depends.
much.
It all depends on. You're going to find people that like the way you write, and you're going to find people that don't like the way you write.
Right.
And it's finding that audience, and that's probably part of, and that's unfortunately when you're dealing with major publishers, they've already got in their mind the type of audience they're going for, and so they're going to look at your stuff, and either they're going to think they can use it or not. And then it's how they, I guess my opinion is how they treat you after that, that tells me if they're really into trying to promote good art, or if they're just, what can I make a couple bucks off?
Well, and that's what the houses are usually looking for, is what's hot now. And in fact, when I pitched my first book in this series, was about 3 years ago, and I got told, paranormal is on its way down. Paranormal is not going to be big. We don't want it. We don't want any more paranormal. We want straight suspense, straight this. And when I went to RWA this last year, it's totally a different thing. We love paranormal.
I was going to say, because I do a little bit of stuff online, and you sign up for these various little organizations and stuff, and all of a sudden they're asking you to read a book. And like I was telling you, a lot of the young adult ones, a lot of the young adult women are writing these paranormal romance with the shape shiftings and all that stuff. They're really,
that's big.
Yeah, it's big. And for somebody to say, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that I've had myself with that, was everybody thinking that art does not change with time.
Right.
That what we think is good writing does not change with time.
Right.
And it's secular. It might not be hot now, and it'll be in another year. It will be. And the thing with, when I go to the conferences, there's authors that try to what they call stay on the wave, and you can't do that. You can't do that because you're always going to be behind.
Would you say it was safe if you were going to tell somebody they're going to be a writer? You need to write what you want and what you feel about, rather than worry about.
Write what you like.
Yeah,
if you don't like what you're writing about, it comes through in your story.
Exactly.
It really
in
does.
other words, don't try to fill the blocks, pigeonholes.
Yeah, and the first book I had, I had one that said, "Oh, we love it. We'll take it if you take out all the paranormal." That's
part of the story.
That's my book. I mean,
exactly.
That's the story arc. So that won't work.
When I write, I have characters that are suddenly like intruding in my head and stuff. And you're sitting there, and all of a sudden you're writing along, and something just pops into your head. Does that kind of happen to you also?
It does a lot, especially in the shower. I don't know why, but usually when I'm stumped, I get in the shower, and I need one of those pads that I can write on in the shower. But yeah, it does.
The little waterproof pads, yeah.
It's just so bad. Or the pushy characters.
Have you ever had a character that started out kind of minor, and then all of a sudden you're going along, before you know it, oh my God, I just wrote the last 4 chapters about that character. What the heck happened?
Yep, I did that. In fact, I had 2 that were supposed to be just the experiment guys, and they're experimented on, and halfway through the book they were going to be killed off, and that was all there was to it. And the one fell off the cliff, and he just didn't die, because the story just kept pushing at me, and actually he's the hero of one of these books, and then his companion is the hero of another book. So yeah, it does happen.
And then one last question, because I know, like me, you're a dog lover. Have you killed a dog off in one of your books?
No.
I did.
Oh.
Every time I read that scene,
I'll kill a person off.
every time I read that scene, I cry, and everybody looks at me. What are you, nuts?
Yeah.
So I could never read it in public, because the dog dies saving his mistress. He's a special dog. He's also genetically altered.
Right.
But and that's the thing, though, that it was part of the story and changes what the woman does, too.
Right.
Because then she finds out she was genetically altered. There's a whole technical story there.
So
But
the dog was a hero.
oh,
I
dog
mean,
was big hero.
That changes it. I don't know if I could do it, but I could see how.
Big hero. Wow, like I said, it just all of a sudden happened.
Right.
You know, and you go, why did I do that? Because it happened. How would the viewing audience find your books and works?
My books are on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. They're also on a website called Indie, what is that new one called? Indie Bound. And I have a website that you could reach me through. It's got my newsletter sign up. You can often catch me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest.
Thank you very much for coming into the studio today and recording this.
Thank you.
Your story and creative abilities is going to be an inspiration to a lot of people out there, especially a lot of the younger people. Especially a lot of people don't even know what a diary was.
Oh, gosh,
you
I
know.
So I had to throw in.
We're looking forward to you try to make some more of our claw meetings too, so you could try to share some of your experience and everything. With our whole writing group, we're slowly but surely trying to build it up for that reason, because I think there's a lot of people out there that the only reason they're not writing is because they're not really sure how to get started,
Right.
and what you can do to get started.
Right.
So I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning into the Kitsap, Bremerton Kitsap Access Television and viewing this Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers production. I also wish to thank the BCAT staff on camera and in the director's chair. This broadcast interview is scheduled for December at 6 p.m. every Saturday evening, Channel 3 on Wave Cable, Channel 12 on Comcast. Keep in touch with us on our Facebook pages for updates on what Kitsap author we will be interviewing in the future, in addition to events the authors will attend in the community. I hope everyone has a pleasant day and a productive and fascinating year. Until next time, I'm Mark Miller with Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers in conjunction with Bremerton Kitsap Access Television. Good day.